The silence in the grand ballroom was deafening. Blood dripped steadily from Imani's split lip onto the marble floor as 300 of the wealthiest families in America stared in stunned disbelief. Her dark eyes, calm as still water, surveyed the faces around her, faces that had just witnessed what they thought was the public humiliation of a poor black girl who didn't belong in their world. But as Imani slowly wiped the blood from her mouth with the back of her hand, a terrifying smile spread across her face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carrying across the silent room like a death sentence. "You just gave me everything I needed." Nobody in that room could have predicted what happened next. Nobody could have imagined that the quiet girl they'd tormented for months, the one they'd called a charity case, the one they'd just slapped in front of hundreds of witnesses, was about to destroy their entire world. But to understand how it all unraveled, we need to go back to where it began. 6 months earlier, when a young woman named Imani Blackwood walked through the gates of Riverside University carrying nothing but a worn backpack and a carefully constructed lie. Riverside wasn't just any university. With tuition fees of $60,000 per year, it was where America's elite sent their children to network with other future billionaires and politicians. The campus looked more like a luxury resort than an educational institution, with its marble columns, manicured gardens, and dormitories that resembled five-star hotels. Every student drove cars worth more than most people's houses, wore designer clothes like uniforms, and spoke about money the way others talked about the weather. Into this world of privilege stepped Imani, deliberately dressed in thrift store clothes that hung loose on her athletic frame. Her backpack was held together with duct tape, her shoes had holes that she'd carefully enlarged, and she carried herself with the hunched shoulders of someone beaten down by life's struggles. She was 20 years old, stunningly beautiful despite her efforts to hide it, and possessed of an intelligence that could have earned her admission to any university in the world. But Imani wasn't at Riverside for an education. She was there for something far more dangerous. Within days, she had attracted the attention of exactly the people she was looking for. Bryce Thornfield noticed her first. The son of a construction mogul, Bryce had inherited his father's business sense and his grandfather's racism in equal measure. He was the kind of young man who referred to diversity initiatives as charity programs and genuinely believed that people like Imani were taking spots that belonged to more deserving students. When he saw her eating alone in the cafeteria, hunched over a simple sandwich while surrounded by students with catered meals from the city's finest restaurants, he saw an opportunity for entertainment. "Look what we have here," he announced loudly to his friends, his voice carrying across the dining hall. "Riverside's newest charity case thinks she belongs with us." His girlfriend, Madison Clark, looked up from her phone where she'd been editing her latest Instagram post for her 2 million followers. Madison was the daughter of a fashion empire CEO, a young woman who'd built her social media brand on showcasing the lifestyle of the ultra-wealthy. She was beautiful in the way that money could buy, perfectly straight teeth, designer everything, and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. When she saw Imani, she saw content. "Oh my God," Madison squealed, already reaching for her phone to start recording. "This is perfect. My followers are going to die when they see this." The third member of their toxic triangle was Hunter Blackwell, a trust fund sociopath whose family controlled a network of luxury hotels across 3 continents. Hunter had never worked a day in his life, never faced a consequence for his actions, and genuinely believed that his wealth made him a superior human being. He looked at people like Imani the way others might look at insects, as creatures so far beneath him that their suffering was merely amusing. "Let's have some fun with this one," Hunter suggested, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. And so began 6 months of carefully orchestrated torment. What none of them realized was that Imani was documenting everything. Every slur, every act of cruelty, every moment of casual racism was being recorded by hidden cameras and sophisticated audio equipment that cost more than their designer wardrobes. She endured it all with a patience that came from knowing exactly what she was building toward. The harassment escalated gradually. It started with accidents, Hunter spilling coffee on her books, Madison bumping into her and sending her lunch tray crashing to the floor, Bryce forgetting to hold doors and letting them slam in her face. But as weeks passed and Imani refused to break, refused to fight back, refused to give them the reaction they craved, their methods became more vicious. Hunter poured chocolate milk over her laptop during a library study session, destroying what appeared to be her only computer. As she stared at the ruined machine, he laughed and told her maybe she should get a job instead of relying on handouts. Madison organized her followers into a harassment campaign, encouraging them to leave cruel comments on any social media account associated with Imani's name. She started a hashtag that trended for 3 days, hashtag send the charity case home. Bryce's contributions were more psychological. He spread rumors that Imani was dealing drugs to afford tuition, whispered to professors that she was cheating on exams, and made sure that every social gathering, every study group, every opportunity for normal college friendships was closed to her. He wanted her isolated, desperate, and broken. But Imani absorbed it all with an otherworldly calm that unnerved even her tormentors. She continued attending classes, continued sitting alone at lunch, continued existing in their world as if their cruelty was nothing more than weather to be endured. This only made them more determined to break her. The breaking point came during Riverside's annual Legacy Gala, a black tie event where wealthy families gathered to celebrate their donations to the university and compete to see who could flaunt their wealth most ostentatiously. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, the tables groaned under the weight of gourmet food, and the guest list read like a who's who of American capitalism. Imani had not been invited, of course. Students like her weren't expected at events like this. But she appeared anyway, still dressed in her thrift store clothes, standing out like a shadow among the designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Her presence was a violation of the unspoken rules that governed their world, and Bryce, Madison, and Hunter saw it as the perfect opportunity for a public execution. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bryce announced, grabbing the microphone from a startled university administrator, "I'd like to introduce you all to Riverside's biggest charity case, a girl who thinks she belongs in our world despite having nothing to contribute to it." The crowd turned to look, some confused, others beginning to smile with anticipation. This was, after all, their entertainment. The systematic exclusion and humiliation of those they deemed unworthy was as much a part of their culture as their expensive wines and imported cars. Madison had her phone out, live streaming to her millions of followers. "This is going to be epic," she whispered to her audience. "We're about to teach this girl where she really belongs." Hunter grabbed Imani by the arm, his grip designed to leave bruises. "On your knees," he commanded, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "Beg us to let you stay in our school." For a moment, Imani looked around the room at the sea of faces watching her humiliation with varying degrees of interest and amusement. These were the people who controlled America's wealth, who made decisions that affected millions of lives, who considered themselves the natural rulers of society. And they were enjoying this. Slowly, deliberately, Imani sank to her knees. The crowd murmured with satisfaction. This was how the natural order was maintained, how boundaries were enforced, how people learned their place in the world. Madison angled her phone to capture every moment of what she was already planning to title "Charity Case Gets Reality Check." "Now," Madison said, raising her perfectly manicured hand, "let's give you something to remember us by." The slap echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Imani's head snapped to the side and blood immediately began flowing from her split lip. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the quiet drip of blood hitting marble. Then Imani began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle, barely audible, but it grew steadily louder and more unsettling. As she turned back to face the crowd, blood still trickling down her chin, her laughter filled the ballroom with a sound that made grown men take a step backward. "Thank you," she said again, and this time her voice carried a note that made everyone in the room suddenly understand that something had gone very, very wrong. "I've been waiting 6 months for you to do something that stupid." The university's security team, embarrassed that this disruption had occurred during such an important event, moved to escort Imani from the ballroom. Three large men in expensive suits approached her with the confidence of people accustomed to handling problems quietly and efficiently. They never saw what hit them. The first guard reached for her arm and found himself flying through the air, his trajectory ending abruptly when he collided with a table full of champagne glasses. The second guard tried to grab her from behind and discovered his wrist bent at an angle that nature never intended. The third guard, the largest and most experienced of the three, lasted exactly 4 seconds before he was face down on the floor with Imani's knee pressed against his spine. The entire sequence had taken less than 30 seconds. The ballroom erupted in chaos as America's wealthiest families scrambled to understand how a girl they just watched being humiliated had transformed into a weapon of devastating efficiency. 15 years of Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Muay Thai, Imani announced calmly as she stepped over the groaning bodies of the security team. My grandmother thought it was important that I learn to defend myself against people exactly like you. She pulled out a phone, not the broken device Hunter had destroyed, but a sleek, expensive prototype that most of the tech executives in the room didn't recognize. "Grandmother," she said into the device, her voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom. "It's time." Within minutes, the sound of vehicles could be heard outside the university's main building. Black SUVs with tinted windows surrounded the campus, and from the lead vehicle stepped a woman who made every person in that ballroom suddenly understand that their world had just shifted on its axis. Victoria Blackwood was 75 years old, barely 5 feet tall, and commanded more wealth and power than everyone in that room combined. As the CEO and founder of Blackwood Global Industries, she controlled a business empire that spanned 6 continents and employed over 3 million people. She was also, as anyone who read the business pages knew, utterly ruthless when it came to protecting her family. "Someone," she said in a voice that could have frozen fire, "has put their hands on my granddaughter." The revelation hit the room like a physical force. The quiet girl they'd tormented, the charity case they'd humiliated, the nobody they'd just assaulted in front of hundreds of witnesses, was the heir to one of the largest fortunes in human history. Victoria Blackwood's investigation team had been working behind the scenes for months, and within hours of that fateful slap, the interconnected web of the tormentors' lives began to unravel with surgical precision. Bryce's father's construction company, it turned out, relied heavily on contracts with Blackwood Industries subsidiaries. Those contracts, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, were terminated immediately. Madison's family fashion brand manufactured their entire luxury line in factories owned by Blackwood Global. Production halted overnight, leaving them with warehouses full of unsellable inventory and no way to fulfill their retail commitments. Hunter's trust fund, managed by investment firms that feared Victoria Blackwood's influence more than they valued his family's business, found its assets suddenly frozen pending regulatory review. But the financial destruction was only the beginning. Madison's live stream of the assault had been viewed by over 50 million people within 12 hours, but her audience wasn't seeing what she thought they were seeing. Imani's team released carefully edited footage showing 6 months of documented harassment, racism, and cruelty. The internet, with its unlimited capacity for righteous fury, exploded. #Justice for Imani became the most trending hashtag in the platform's history. Madison's social media empire, built on the worship of wealth and privilege, collapsed overnight as millions of followers abandoned her in disgust. Bryce found himself the subject of countless memes mocking his racism and entitlement. Hunter discovered that every exclusive club, every luxury resort, every social gathering that had once welcomed him now treated him like a pariah. The three who had thought themselves untouchable discovered what it meant to be truly powerless in a world controlled by someone with both unlimited resources and unlimited motivation for revenge. But Imani wasn't finished. Standing before them in the ruins of their carefully constructed lives, she made an offer that was somehow worse than complete destruction. "You have a choice," she told them, her voice carrying the authority of someone born to command empires. You can spend the next 5 years working minimum wage jobs while volunteering 20 hours each week teaching underprivileged children, with every penny you earn going to anti-bullying foundations. Or you can face criminal charges for assault, harassment, and hate crimes, along with civil lawsuits that will ensure you spend the rest of your lives in debt. The choice was no choice at all, and they knew it. 1 year later, the transformation was complete. Bryce Thornfield, who had once sneered at the idea of honest work, spent his days loading trucks at a food distribution center and his evenings teaching literacy to children whose backgrounds reminded him constantly of the person he'd thought Imani was. Madison Clark, stripped of her social media empire and designer lifestyle, cleaned office buildings during the day and ran anti-cyberbullying workshops for teenagers at night. Hunter Blackwell, who had never known anything but luxury, lived in a studio apartment and tutored disadvantaged students in math and science, finally learning what it meant to contribute something meaningful to the world. But Imani's true victory wasn't their downfall. It was what she built from their ashes. The Blackwood Justice Foundation, funded with a $2 billion endowment, became the most powerful anti-bullying organization in the world. The evidence she'd gathered during her months at Riverside led to investigations at 47 universities, exposing systemic discrimination and forcing institutional changes that protected thousands of future students. Standing in her grandmother's office overlooking the city skyline, Imani reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She could have simply used her wealth and power to destroy her tormentors from the beginning. Instead, she had chosen to let them reveal their true nature, to document their cruelty, and to use their own actions as the foundation for their downfall. "I learned something important during those 6 months," she told the interviewer who had come to document her story. "True power isn't about the money you have or the violence you can inflict. It's about understanding that everyone you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about, carrying burdens you can't imagine, and deserving of respect regardless of what they appear to have or lack." She paused, touching the small scar that remained on her lip from Madison's slap. "The next time you see someone you think is beneath you, remember this story. That quiet person in the corner might be planning to change the world. That student you're mocking might become your boss. That nobody you're dismissing might be recording everything, waiting for you to reveal who you really are. In a world where everyone has cameras and nothing stays hidden forever, the only safe choice is to treat everyone with kindness and respect." The interviewer asked if she regretted the harsh punishment she'd inflicted on her former tormentors. Imani smiled, the same terrifying smile that had silenced a ballroom full of America's elite. "I gave them something more valuable than money or power," she said. "I gave them the chance to become better human beings. Whether they choose to take that gift or waste it is entirely up to them." As the camera faded to black, text appeared on the screen. The Blackwood Justice Foundation has since provided full scholarships to over 10,000 students from underrepresented backgrounds. Sometimes the most powerful response to hate is hope. But everyone who watched the video remembered something else entirely: the moment when a girl they thought was powerless proved that you should never, ever mistake kindness for weakness.